Alrighty, so like Mr. Squiggle, product placement. If you've ever seen Demolition Man, I'm just going to put that there because it might help. I don't know. One of the favourite parts of my days yesterday was a nice cool glass of Coca-Cola, which is still a number one treat that I always like to enjoy. So I'll just leave that right there, just accidentally on purpose as well. Also, if you need a razor, or a shaver for whatever, for your face or for any other parts of your body, Gillette, the best a man can get, or the best anyone can get. It doesn't even have to be a man, because it is 2024, but why can't I get Gillette? Gillette. Yeah, these are fucking amazing. I've got 2 of them. They last forever. They're really durable. They're really good. They don't clog up. Amazing thing. So yeah, thanks Gillette. And without further ado, I'm going to now do the next one. So I'll put that down. I'll put that up on the top of my bookshelf. It's waiting for anyone who wants to buy it. Hopefully it doesn't fall on anyone's head. That'd be no good. But yeah. Now, Mr. Squiggle looks like, do we do portrait or landscape? Let's give it a wipe down first. Let's go with portrait. Am I in the shot? Oh, look at that, I'm in the shot. Cool. Cool, that was easier than I thought. Just stick that there. And I've got a new pen because from Artline, good pens. The other one was Artline as well, but I left the lid off it like a dickhead, and so it dried up. So I've got to look. I'll check on Google and see if I can remember how to bring a texture back to life rather than just going and getting another one. And also from that, I'll remember to put the freaking lid on this one when I finish. This is going to be a little bit of business, and I'm going to use an allegory of a cave in the form of this. I'm going to start with this. You'll notice this is a similar shape to what I drew yesterday, right? We'll start with this. Now that, in a cave, a structure like that would be called a stalactite. I'm not going to write it because you just know. And this is a build-up of water and minerals that drips down from a cave roof. So it hits a point, runs along, hits a point where it ends its grip to the roof and it drips down. And as it drips, it slowly adds sediment, and then we get these things called stalactites. And we're going to use that for a metaphor of supply or demand, I'm not sure yet. And so as the water drips down, it kind of sits here, and just over a very slow process, it builds and builds and builds and builds a structure that hangs, and with the stalactite, there will be a reaction to that down the bottom, which is called a stalagmite. I was always told that a stalagmite might reach the top and a stalactite is holding on tight. And then the middle we'll just call, like, this is the dance of the drop. This is its moment, right? It holds on. It knows it's gonna make its transition from upwards to downwards and like, so, you know, this is pretty consistent as well. This is a never-ending thing that happens, and so we can use it as a metaphor. A lot of good metaphors have taken place in caves, so I'm not going to end thousands of years of history by stopping that. But let's look at this as supply and demand. And let's specifically look at this as supply and demand for the medical industry, because that's where I've been focusing on a lot. So, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Now, medicine and medical care was for the majority of human history and for the majority of organisms and animals and life on this planet, it is predominantly an individually driven thing. Now, I think it's Margaret Mead has a very famous quote where she describes the birth of civilization as she found someone whose leg had been put in a cast or splintered. And she described, I don't know whether she's a doctor, because that would be a little bit of PR for herself, if it was, because, I mean, the idea of this being a form of civilization, because the reasoning she gave was that all other things are left to their own devices, and a broken leg would mean probably certain death. And so the fact that this person from this ancient civilization that we uncovered had a leg that had been treated medically was some type of indication that that was civilized. I would kind of counteract that by saying, well, one, we don't know if this. I mean, I could strap my own leg. So, and we have countless examples of animals, plants, everything looking after their own care in the form of self-medicating with plants and animals and treatments. Yoga is a great example. This is a self-determined practice of self-care, self-medicine. This makes up the far majority of all medical care is self-driven if we expand beyond our own relatively new civilized history. And it's kind of statements like Margaret Mead, if it was her, she's a great person in other things. I'm not going to hold this one statement against her, but yeah, I'd say the first person who treated themselves for a broken leg I'd say that happened a fair few times before anyone else did. And that could have easily taken place in a family or a tribe, and it doesn't need civilization. It's not even really a great example. The elephant in the room of this. So this is going to be like, and these are going to jump around. I think that's why I'm having trouble, because this is off the top of my head. This is me formulating a concept. That's why it's worth $6,000. Because it's a type of art, I suppose, happening right in front of you. The texture I had yesterday was better. Anyway, I'm going to stick to the point. I can't even say whether this is supply or demand. It's probably going to be both. This can act as supply, this can act as demand, this can act as demand, and this can act as supply. because we're not dealing with something that is a gravitational force. It's only being positioned as something that is a gravitational force because the far majority of everything on Earth self does care. And so the supply demand change. It's like if you have a broken leg, the demand for you to fix your own leg is quite high because you will probably end up dead. And so that's an internal thing that would be displayed as just an event. It doesn't have this supply-demand thing. This supply-demand paradigm only exists when individuals are providing medical care to other individuals. And it's a place where I think we're right at the point where the atrocities of using a capitalistic, which I'm in support of, mostly capitalistic methodology for providing something like this has inevitably resulted in very large stalactites and stalagmites forming. Let's just write. Now you see, like I'm using capitals and lowercase. I'm kind of I'm actually not very used to writing. I'm a little bit out of practice. I've never been good at spelling, and when I'm in a pressure situation like this, it gets even worse. Weird thing to know about me. My speech abilities get heightened, whereas my ability to use a lesser communication form like writing gets hindered by pressure situations. Just a little fun fact to add on top of it. So, and like, just to be honest with you, like I've written that medicine, like honestly, it looks wrong. I mean, that's a capital D. Med is like, it's like there's this thing there that just doesn't work. It's always been the same. And people have thought, at school, people thought I was making it up and being silly. I remember a teacher once instructed me to write friends on the blackboard, and I honestly didn't know. The way if I have dyslexia, which again is just a creation of this supply and demand chain, because who knows? I wasn't born with a fucking thing. And the limitations I experience with this, whatever this is going on, they're actually advantages in other areas. So yeah, I've made this sign. I think it is right, but I don't know. And that's basically how that is. Especially when it's in text, I'm a lot better. When it's on a computer, there's not as much. When I write it, I honestly, if I had to put money on whether that was right or wrong, I couldn't. I don't know. And it's a word that I've used 1,000 times. It just doesn't. Anyway, off the topic really. So with a stalactite and a stalagmite, I mean, it obviously begins at the top. This is the whole thing of the cave. Water runs on the roof of the cave, actually like this, seeps through. And a lot of times it'll get to there in the surface tension, like a little drop. And I know this because a lot of my job that I used to do when I worked in construction was to find leaks, and so I know water does some weird shit. So a lot of times it might pop out here, but it might, with surface tension, kind of run across the cave wall, and then maybe get to somewhere like here and then drop and leave a little bit of sediment, and over a very, very long time that sediment kind of builds up as a mound, and then it's slowly out, and it gets pointier and pointier and keeps, and then it starts running down and off the tip, and that's what makes the shape. And it's to do with surface tension of water, because water is, it's an interesting thing. And then the opposite, once there's a drop in, they're dropping perfectly down in the straight line, because that's how gravity works. So this is the only straight line. Straight lines in nature are existent. Like, there is a theoretical straight line that runs straight through all of this, but we're only left with clues unless you see the drop. So if you videoed a drop, you can imagine that, you could video the drop, and that will create over time a little mound here which does the reverse of that, builds up, and that will splash. So a lot of times, like, just you can kind of, the stalagmites down the bottom, they're going to be a response to that splashing. And so you could see different levels of these things. Obviously, when we get to this big pointy stage, we've had a lot of time. I've actually seen stalactites forming off like water tanks and things, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so there's a dead straight line between these two things, but it's in time, it's not permanent. It just is it's the underlying effect. And if you had perfectly clear distilled water without any mineral content, you wouldn't get stalactites or stalagmites forming, because the water would just drop. Or if you don't have a lot of time, you don't. So anyway, stalactites and stalagmites are a formation caused by water droplets. If you sped that up long enough, like fast enough, you would just see a constant line of water in this building. Okay, so where am I getting to? This is the interaction. So we could have, obviously, the first drop of water in the medical industry, the birth of medicine, was, I mean, you could say things like, it's always been there, because a mother breastfeeding her baby is providing medicine. And that would be the first introduction that we would have. And so from that, we can see that this will be overall, because it is captured in that, I mean, obviously it's the first. I mean, you could go backwards before that and claim that the act of conception is a form of medicine from the father to the mother. Then you're getting into a tricky bit of territory where we have to determine whether life is a gift or whether it is a burden. So let's not go down that rabbit hole, because that opens up too much complexity for this thing. So we can see that medicine, because think about it, like that is the first act. Giving birth, that's the birth. So you've given birth. The next act is to nurse. It's even called nursing. Clues everywhere, isn't there? So medicine is the demand for medicine is the pacifying of distress cries of children by nursing them. First act of medicine, we are all exposed. Oh, there we go. A little bit of tricky territory, don't we? And immediately, we're now that if you've been raised in the last 600 years, you can see how medicine
is interacting like that. So that's evolved off, gone off on its own trajectory. So if we can just theoretically get to that as the first obvious point of medical care is from a mother to their infant, first nursing, first, get it? Then we can stack up how this supply and demand chain is formed. So the demand comes from the child. And this is where these are going to switch. So we could say the demand, right, the droplet, this is the child crying. This, as it's in this no man's land, literally, because we've got an infant and a mother, the water's dropping through this no man's land. This is where the mother receives the crying and then offers the first form of medicine to the infant in the form of their milk, which as their body has already gotten ready to provide, because this is something we have evolved to do. And we're talking about initial, before we've developed any additional, like this is probably, I mean, we just get to thousands of years ago where this is the base level of humanity. You can't make any assumptions on well-being or anything from mother's perspective because we don't know, we weren't there. But from this, it's obvious to kind of see that, and everyone kind of talks about this as how many people were, how many mothers used to die during childbirth. It's in the Bible, it's like described as this whole thing, because we have a very, very intense gestation and development period for humans in mothering. Like it's a very long period, and human babies are incredibly reliant, hence the formation of such a strong effect, the birth of medicine. So the birth of medicine is that effect. Now, other species, sometimes their children are more capable. I mean, a lot of creatures don't even interact at this level at all. But we can see that the initial demand is coming from the child to the mother, and then the mother is providing the supply demand to the child in the form of milk. And then the demand for medicine will also be coming from the mother or from the female side, because it's not, obviously that's just the first introduction is milk. Then all the other things which are felt very strongly by the mother are things like shelter, eventually food, like clothing, protection, safety, security. These are all the base forms of medicine that the mother is getting demand from their child and then providing for. The next place I want to go to is if we think of a traditional mothering role. This is after infanthood, so obviously the very early year or 2 or 3, whatever it is, and probably longer as we go back, if left uninterfered with, is for the mother to provide an escalating level of supply to the, and this is like instinctual really, because the demand isn't specific. Obviously, a crying baby for hunger is very specific, usually. If you take into account like nutritional things, that's dependent on the mother in the nursing period. And so this is where, if you take a traditional role, and this is funny, if we've got a traditional mother's role or women's role in a tribal system, a non-civilized system, they usually gathering, and this is where the demand for a wide variety of nutrition elements is taken on by the mother. And if you think of, like, say, hunting, and these are traditional roles, okay? Traditional roles as hunting that makes up a large portion. It's like that, but then all the more subtle nutritional things are provided by gathering of, and this would have included medicines and things like that. So medicine was begun as a female supply chain to their infant, and continued down to that. Now, if we go to modern medicine, one of the claims that modern medicine makes consistently and accurately is the concept that they have the death rate of mothers giving birth is far lower, and this is true, but this is seen through, it's a very small window of time, and because we cannot know how much of that was environmental and how much of that is just base humanity. We could do things like looking at apes and monkeys and things like that, but they're interfered with. So basically, modern medicine has done a better job than a period of time that we knew about, but that period of time is far from the majority of time. That is a very fleeting amount of time. And then counterintuitively, we could, and this is now I'm in controversial territory, of course, is that infant mortality, because it was the infants and the mothers in this day and age, has more than likely just been replaced with abortion and preventative contraception. So we've just, it's an image thing. It is, we are selling the concept of killing your baby before it's born rather than having it die after it's born. And that makes up a huge box that we're all now born into. Because unfortunately, when you get a concept like that, that is called PR, or marketing. For non-intuitive, non-instinctual, non-base biological intervention into humanity, which is a modern creation. And just like any modern creation, it's a structure, it has a priesthood, it has doctrine, it has dogma, it has public relations and marketing, and it is very concerned with its image, overall image. One of the great examples of this is like all the Grey's Anatomy. Grey's Anatomy. ER, the George Clooney TV show. House. The countless examples of their iconography. That's a stethoscope. It quite often used to be a little hammer, but that's kind of been outdated now, so now they're trying to make us forget that they ever used a little hammer. These are the symbols of, and things like the Red Cross. And then also the staff, which we could look at. That's that staff there with the snakes. Which I was going to say it's caduceus, but it's not. Caduceus is a different one. That's the can't remember. That actually tracks back to like supposedly Hermes, because it has a staff with wings on it. And this is so the introduction to medicine. But I mean, we can just kind of look at this as, if we think of the initial nursing that human beings did was, and we don't know the interaction really fathers had, but mothers would take care of the nursing on their own instinctually. This is, all animals are basically like this. Humans aren't, because there is a structure that is very, very well protected, very well promoted, and very well established, that comes between this supply and demand drop. Right? So if you've got a busy, like if you're in advertising and you have a busy street with a billboard on it, that's a great place to put a sign. And that, whereas if I say, put a Coke bottle in my video that might not be seen because I live in a shadow banned world of controversial material, maybe until now, is a traditionally less valuable place. But if you position yourself right here between the initial demand from your baby infant to the supply of your milk, the more you can squeeze in that space, the more billboard space you can put there, the more you can expand your structure of authority or of care. Now, this is where I'm going to get. I'm going to wind it up because I'm running out of time, right? So you can see how this kind of maps out like the allegory of the cave. That's about a projection on the wall while you're watching it. So this is a projection here. And it's the first, so we're literally born through it. Our drop. We're born into that. And you can, if you go individually look at your birth, or someone you know who's giving birth and traditionally into this thing, you would be amazed. So this is actually, you could call this a 9-month period. A month, gestation. And it's prime advertising billboard territory between the mother and their child. And it is stockpiled. It is just like, it's like prime time Super Bowl, that 9-month gestation. It's where you do all the work in getting this structure established in the minds of both the mother and the child. And so it's a projection on the cave, and the drop is a 9-month drop. It takes 9 months. And look, you could go back, this could be the male into the female as well. You know what I mean? Like, these are consistent things. But because we've got time as an element, we've frozen this time period. extended, it's out to 9-month gestation, and look how much is put in there. Now, the reason I think this happened, and I hope I don't run out because I'm getting the little warning that says I'm running out. The next thing you have to realise about this is the effect of war. If you've just trodden on a landmine, or you've had your arm blown off by a German machine gun, and you're laying there getting ready to die, which unfortunately a lot of our young men did at the beginning of this century, twice in two of the most horrific mechanised industrial wars. Not the most, they are the gold standard of the atrocity of industrialisation towards killing. Then if you see a Red Cross van coming and putting you in it, then that is a saviour, right? And they were doing a good job, because in war that was justified. This is the same as MASH, you know what I mean? You just land in a hospital and opposed to dying, they're lifesavers, they're angels, they're guardians, they're magical things. Now, all those people, my guess is that we over supplied medical doctors. A lot of doctors in war, they weren't really even doctors. They were kind of trained up and shown, and it's on demand. As the demand, we need doctors. Right, like Spitfire pilots. They weren't really, a lot of them weren't very well trained. They just were given a plane and told to fly. And this is the same as the doctors. But whereas now we have 80 years of, like, we've got multi-generations of this medical who were positioned as saviours, because all the troops thought they were, they did save lots of lives, so they were amazing people. A lot of the soldiers, I mean, tons of them were dead, so we had like heroes, but they were scarred. So the only people that could really talk about all these things were the medical doctors, which were, so you get what I'm saying? And it became a place to send your children because it's a better alternative. Alright, so excuse that probably the camera angle changed and I ran out of storage. We'll go straight back in it. It became a better alternative to have your children go through to medicine rather than to be soldiers. And I think that is like a base, we all felt that, right? And we all agree with that. And that became, it's like an 80-year trajectory. And we're only now just encountering the potential flaws in that type of slight bias. Like, all it would have been is a slight bias. And you can see it's probably driven again by the supply and demand issue between children and their mothers, like the initial nursing of a baby crying and then nursing them with milk. As mothers project this baby into the future, if they start hearing of, or they know, they would have known the amount of men that didn't come back because they were dead. The ones that were coming back may have interacted with this medical system and been saved by it. And so it's a pretty easy decision. It's like, this is a gun. Right? Do mothers want their children after this war period to have a gun, or do they want them to be doctors? And so this supply demand from mothers, and because there were far more mothers than there were fathers and sons, because they were all killed by guns and bombs. by fucking evil ideologies, extremist totalitarian ideologies in the form of the Nazis or say the Soviets. It was fucking hammer and sickle. And so it only needs to be slight, but over an 80-year period, if everyone is slightly this. Now this would have only been the initial probably 30 or 40 years. And then what's happened is a lot of war was replaced by business and marketing. And the idea of PR and marketing actually comes from a significant doctor like Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays. He came from, so this is from this, they escaped this extreme ideology and created this, but this is the new paradigm of war. It's not even new because it's actually, they reverse engineered what these figures, Stalin and Hitler, had done. And rather than implanting a totalitarian utopian vision that created atrocities, they, under a single person, they created a totalitarian structure that inevitably led to atrocities. And it's just out of view until it's not. Now, just like, so a lot of these things, like down here, the Nazis and Stalin, I think it's like Nazi Germany had a 90% support. I think both of these did. That's why they existed. They weren't fringe, they were the majority because they relied on mob tactics. Are you in or you're out? You're in, and just that shifting all in, it gathers a big group. And this is the same thing we just saw with the roll up for WA vaccine. But it's either genius intelligence work over a 5-year period to kind of explore this, because I can't help but notice, I'm seeing it like kind of in hindsight, and I've also had lots of interference in my life. But this would have been known a little bit by certain individuals that we were heading this way. You introduce like the idea of public healthcare. This is why we can't see it, because it's hidden by a larger structure that goes around this whole kind of thing. This is a protected bubble to this again, and this is the other thing that implants itself in this 9-month period between this initial demand and supply from a mother to a child, is government. Because government in this country particularly, this medical thing, this is most of it is subsidised by the government. I mean, and then employment percentages, this structure between government and medicine is ever increasingly is becoming a larger and larger majority of our workforce and of our population, of our citizenship. So if you make a criticism of either one of these, you're not just criticising based on the ideology or the observations you're seeing. Everyone who lives in these two structures is threatened by that. It's a direct tribal attack and tribal defense. And it's a very unhealthy structure that has been positioned in a place that it just should not be. It's not needed. We're not in war. And it is just the shift of like, do you want your children? Let's look at just the percentage of people joining the armed military forces, which could be used for peaceful or constructive purposes, and traditionally have been. The fact that they carry guns doesn't mean they have to shoot people. They get the military is what formed this country. It was by the British Navy. This country is a colony forged by the disciplined force of the British Navy. And you can see it at every capital city, how that started. The medical doctors interacting in the military were, for most of human conflict, were an unnecessary thing, and there's a lot of horror stories of that. It's only through the lens of 2 industrial wars that and just the mass levels of violence and the people literally being chopped in half with machine gun fire, and just how much, the same way as we did damage to this country with tractors by clearing the whole thing in such a short amount of time. That's what the wars were, the World War I and World War II. They were industrial wars. They were terrible. And so, yeah, it's just this slight bias towards mothers, mainly, shifting their children to a place that they could feel safe. But whereas if you joined the military, you were passing through, you are forced to pass through a gap where you are confronted with the reality of violence. It's very early on. When I first went to join the military, it's the first thing they say to you is you're going to be, if you are asked to kill, you will kill. Now, so maybe harsh, especially from a mother's perspective, especially if they're maybe disconnected from the demand from their children and they don't understand, or maybe they're disconnected from, because this also, this division between this 9-month period, it's not just positioning itself for the mother, it positions itself between the male and female as well, between the mother and father. Funny, isn't that? Male, female, mother, father. Anyway. And so the male, that's here. It's not the father. It's increasingly someone from government or someone from the medical, PR and marketing world that is interfering between these things. And fair enough, if this is now traditionally that's why we've had a large number of women go into nursing. It was it's the largest role for women until we went into kind of administration and things like that. Because women are nursing from the minute they're mothers and they're natural nurses. And so women have always been they've always been nurses, and so they've always been maybe pushing their daughters into nursing, pushing their sons into medicine. At an ever-increasing rate after the war, because that slight bias to look after the children, which is understandable, but at scale and at a long period of time can cause these effects. So this has come between marriages as well, because a father has a very specific view and perspective, especially on their male sons. And I'm going to run out of battery now, so I'll finish it off. But that's pretty good. So, basically, the solution, this medical can do as much harm as this guns and bombs. Because it's the same way as this. So this gun was used by Hitler and Stalin to cause lots of trouble. This can be used the same. Now, so I put it to them to prove that they're not. And counteractively, this military can be used to do constructive, good, disciplined, orderly work that has, because it is multifaceted, is multi-skilled, there's lots of places in that structure, and lots of different skill sets and hierarchies and things like that to cover like so much ground with what they need to provide and logistically and all these things. So we are inevitably here, we're at a conflict here, and we need to start talking about these things openly, and we need complete protection to be able to, because we're trying to prevent this again, but it's happening over here. And this is very simplistic. Obviously, I could talk about this for 6 hours because that's how deep it is, but I think I've done a pretty good job.
Thought it'd be funny as well, because I finished watching and then I went and got a drink of water from this filtration thing that I made, and this is just how fucking things work. Like, I didn't put that there. Someone else, I've got an idea who it was, put that there and says star patient from a long time ago. That's a sticker that has come from a doctor. That's like the sticker that mechanics leave on the back of your car. Star patient. What does that even mean? Why is it on my water filter? I'd love to know who put it there, by the way. But what I thought I'd do is I'd take it off, because I've been a patient of this nonsense since I was born. And I thought I'd stick it right there in the middle of that fucking PR and marketing explanation I just gave. To just show you, I can't forget Gillette, the best a man can get. Gillette, because I don't need an advertisement on my water, because it's just it's a filter that I made and it filters the town water. And the doctors had nothing to fucking do with it, so I don't know why it's been stuck on my water jug. Who knows? But isn't it just funny? And I think, look at it. Just shows that nothing's sacred in this whole fucking world. Funny is what, like, that's a Coke, so that's a Coke bottle, which, because they're the best bottles. They're fizzy drink, high pressure. I trust that quite a lot. I don't think it really, I trust this in the bottle more than in the pipes. That's why I have a filter, which actually costs a fair bit of money. And isn't it funny that it's like catching the water and someone stuck a sticker in there, like I don't know. Do you get what I mean? A lot of things like this. We've got to be careful. We've got to get that herd immunity for this type of nonsense. And we've got to feel confident and empowered to point it out. So next time a doctor sticks a fucking sticker on your kid that says star patient, go, what the fuck are you doing, dickhead? Why are you doing that? You know what I mean?